A taxi. It is a means of transportation that provides convenience to people and allows them to move quickly and accurately. Today, I'm going to introduce a scary story about the taxi. This is what I heard from Jack, who is a taxi driver I know. If you saw a ghost while driving at night, there is a saying that you should never get in a taxi. Ghosts I saw while driving. When Jack drives at night, if he sees a figure in the distance, he said he could tell for sure whether the shape was a person or not. Jack was really in a car accident while he was driving, so he was bleeding and helping out on the road. He said he had seen someone requesting it. At that time, the person looked really scared, but he said he was very hurt. However, it seems like a person who looks really normal is seen from afar. As you get closer, you feel like that's not a person. Jack's friend experienced this firsthand. I was driving on a road that was known to be frequently haunted. It is said that a woman was waving and trying to catch a taxi, but Jack's friend felt like he wasn't a human being. I walked past her thinking I should never burn her. However, suddenly the car felt shocked by some kind of pressure. So I checked the back with the room mirror, and the woman's face on the trunk of the car. He said he was looking at Jack's friend. Jack sped out of the area as fast as he could. When she looked in the mirror once again, she said her face was gone. And Jack's experience is when he was driving around to it, and there was a sign for advertising on the side of the road, where there were few people. But under the sign I could see the profile of a child, who looked about 6 years old. Jack thinks, why is the child alone on the road at this time? I was slowing down a little bit and heading towards the kid. Almost as close to the child suddenly looked at Jack. By the way, where the child's eyes were supposed to be, there were 2 black holes. I didn't know what was inside, so I couldn't understand it as an eye. Jack quickly got out of the place. Sweating, I'm driving home. This time, under the street light you see in front of you, a child wearing the same clothes as the one we saw earlier. I could see the profile, though Jack could see it. I didn't care and just kept driving forward. And when I'm almost home, a child who looks about 6 years old again at a street lamp near his house. I could see the profile of the child wearing the same clothes. Jack parked in front of the house as fast as he could. I found the key to enter the house. I looked back because it felt weird. Under the streetlight in front of the house, you could see the back of the child. Jack was able to open the door of the house almost before he cried. He said he could not sleep until the morning, barely sleeping that day. Fortunately, he said he had not seen the child since then, but had heard other taxi drivers describe him. Maybe ghosts can know people. Who can see ghosts when living people see themselves? Next, the story is about when a ghost is picked up as a taxi customer. Jack was told by a senior at work who had been a taxi driver for a long time, if you're driving and you put something that's not a person in the car as a customer, there's a story that says you must take the ghost to the destination you want. If the ghost said he wanted to go somewhere, it would be a story that something the ghost wanted was there. It is said that if a taxi driver takes you to the destination, ghosts can bring good luck to the taxi driver. It's the smartest way not to put ghosts in a taxi. If you take a taxi as a customer, you should drive safely to your destination, just like a living person. This is a story that Jack's company colleague, an older senior, experienced himself. Around 3 a.m., a woman was waving to get a taxi in front of her. The taxi driver could see at once that she was not a living person. I don't know why, but he just said he put her in the car. She said she wanted to go to her destination, toward the entrance near a small mountain, where there were not many people. The taxi driver knows it's not a person sitting in the back, so she's bothered. It is said that he drove to his destination in a tense state. And when we were almost there, the taxi driver suddenly remembered a scary story he had heard before. I put a woman ghost as a guest in a taxi, and when I arrived, there was no one where she was sitting. With that in mind, a taxi arrived at the destination. The taxi driver checked the woman in the room mirror. There was a woman sitting there. "We've arrived," he said, and looked back. It took about 2 seconds to check on the woman in the room mirror and look back. She wasn't there at the time. The taxi driver got out of the car and smoked. But I've arrived at my destination. So there's nothing bad about me, is there? I thought. Then in the left ear of the taxi driver, a woman's voice saying, "Thank you." The taxi driver looked back to the left in surprise. Then I saw a human foot in the tree behind the left. A woman with her neck hanging from a big tree. Even without seeing her face, it was clearly the woman who the taxi driver put in the car as a customer when she saw her clothes. So the taxi driver contacted the police right away, and they told the truth after arriving. However, it actually happened, but there were so many mysteries that the taxi driver was reportedly investigated by the police that day until the morning. And I was so tired and scared that I took the next day off from work. And the day I went back to work, from that day on, he was able to earn almost 4 times the amount of money he usually earned by driving a taxi for about a month. Maybe the woman thanked her for finding her body. And the second experience. One day, as the sun went down, I was on a deserted road. Suddenly, a child who appeared to be about 7 years old suddenly jumped in front of the car he was driving. The taxi driver was so surprised that he stepped on the brake in a hurry. Just in case the child was seriously injured, the taxi driver got out of the car right away and ran to the front of the car to check on the child. But the child wasn't there. I checked the bottom of the car. I checked the back of the car. There was no sign of any accident except the skid mark on the floor. So the taxi driver thought, "What did I see? Did I see it wrong?" And sat back in the driver's seat. Then the boy's voice suddenly heard, "Please go there." The taxi driver had goosebumps all over his body, and he couldn't say anything. Without any response, I looked at the back seat in the room mirror, and the child who jumped in front of the car earlier was sitting. The taxi driver was scared, but he started to drive. The destination, the child said, was a place where no taxi driver had ever been. And when he took a non-human taxi as a customer, the taxi driver was driving nervous, thinking that he had to take him to his destination. The taxi driver turned on the radio to forget any scary thoughts. I heard the radio news, and the news was that there was a car accident in the area going to the destination. It was a story of a big accident because 3 cars collided, and the taxi driver, who felt something strange, went back to the room mirror. I looked at the back seat. At the time, the child was not in the seat. The taxi driver, surprised, stopped the car for a moment and checked the back seat again with his gibberish eyes. There was no sign of anyone sitting, and the taxi driver saw no one in the car, drove slowly to the area anyway. After arriving safely, the taxi driver went home without incident. The taxi driver, who had a strange idea, went to the shaman the next day. I told the shaman about yesterday's story in detail. Then the shaman said, "A child is still standing next to you. But it seems that the child is not trying to do anything bad to you. He is trying to help you." That's what he said. The shaman said, "If the child hadn't stopped your car yesterday, your car driving that way would probably have been in an accident." That's what he said. The taxi driver, who heard the story, said he thought, maybe he is a guardian angel, rather than being scared. It is said that he thought that the story that when a ghost was put in a taxi as a customer, good luck would come if he took the ghost to his destination. could prevent such a bad accident in advance. The last story. And this was told directly by Jack's coworkers, whose family is a shaman. There are rules that must be followed while working as a taxi driver. When a taxi has a customer, never say with your mouth how many people are in it. That's what it is. For example, when a man gets in the back of a taxi, he says, "Hello, you two look like a great couple. Are you going on a date?" The question is not to be asked. It is not accurate whether the person was in a taxi with a real woman, or if the man alone was in a taxi, but in the eyes of the taxi driver, which woman appears to be in the taxi with. If a man and a woman get on and say, "You two are a great couple," and the male customer in the taxi said, "Who are you talking about?" "I'm in the taxi alone." "Oh, I accidentally said that. Because I was thinking about something else," he said. It is said that when a non-human being gets in a taxi, it is dangerous to say that he is feeling the ghost. It actually happened. Jack's coworker was driving, and a man was waving to get a taxi. However, in the taxi driver's eyes, there was clearly a woman sitting on the man's left shoulder. It was not a person, but a person standing together. First, the taxi driver stopped the car, and the man got into the taxi. At that time, I saw a customer in the room mirror. The man was sitting at the door of the taxi, and inside, it was a woman who couldn't see her face. It was the woman on his shoulder. The taxi driver said he took a ghost-like customer to his destination. What the hell was the relationship between the man and the woman? Today, I talked about the scary stories I heard from my friend, who is a taxi driver. Taxi at night, it's not just a scary story of crime.